to another edition of BWARP, the Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Program. This program is supported by the Los Angeles Urban Leagues and their board and staff, along with Parkside Economic Development Corporation's board and staff. And we want to welcome you to another edition of Mo Money, Mo Money, Mo Money. This series, the month of August, is designed to teach us how to attain, retain, and sustain wealth, which often requires us to augment, supplement, and complement our primary source of income. We must be creative in our approach to wealth building, and we must take advantage of the technology that allows us to do big business virtually. Every Thursday this month, we're going to plant a seed that's going to grow into a wealth building tree of success. Last week, we discussed the benefits of ADUs and Airbnbs. Tonight, we focus on succeeding with e-commerce. So if you have a question during the session, put that question in the Q&A section, not the chat. Submit your question to Q&A, and our virtual producer, Jacinda Moten, will make sure that it gets answered during the Q&A portion of our program. We are fortunate this evening to have two young superstars in the world of e-commerce. They are co-founders of Unbox, Inc., Kendra Ward and Hakeem Isaac Atwater. Kendra is a Gates Millennial Scholar and attained a dual degree in math and industrial and informational systems engineering from Spelman College and the University of Southern California, respectively. While at USC's Marshall School of Business, she became interested in entrepreneurship. Before becoming an entrepreneur, she held positions at Oracle, Goldman Sachs, and Prudential. Ms. Ward is very passionate about developing the leaders of tomorrow. And her business partner, Hakeem Isaac Atwater, is a former investment banker who is passionate about being an entrepreneur, and he's dedicated to ensuring future generations have equity and building and longevity in the workplace. Hakeem earned his accounting degree from Morehouse. That's right, he's a Morehouse man. And he was professionally trained by the likes of Goldman Sachs, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and Fifth Third Bank, where he was the youngest appointed corporate VP within the bank's $170 billion footprint. When Hakeem is not working on his startup, he enjoys competing in triathlons and teaching financial literacy to anyone who will listen. But before we hear from this dynamic duo, we're going to hear from one of their mentors, Noel Massey, about the viability, flexibility, and numerous opportunities within the e-commerce space. Noel has held many executive positions in his 42-year career at UPS, including president of the Central California District. While he was working, he was responsible for all operations, customer relationship management, and revenue management of nearly $3.7 billion. Massey attended San Jose State University School of Engineering before receiving his bachelor's degree in business management from LaSalle University. Now retired, Massey began his UPS career in 1977 as a part-time package handler while attending college. His professional affiliations are way too vast to mention, but he's here with us tonight as chairman of the board emeritus of the Los Angeles Urban League, where he actively consults and supports the organization and is responsible for much of the great work the Los Angeles Urban League has done and will do. Noel, welcome to BWARP.
Pastor Smith, I want to thank you and your organization for inviting us here tonight. We're very honored to spend some time with you and your participants. And I want to thank your producer and Jacinda, Michael, for putting this event together. You know, it's always easy to go to stuff. It's hard to actually execute on it. So I'm happy I'm not the one who had to do that. I can rely on your team for this evening. So we're happy to be here. It's a real privilege. This evening is about learning. It's about education. It's only a short period of time, but I would hope that as participants, when you get off this event, that it inspires you to take the next steps to gaining some understanding and opportunity that can exist for yourself and your families when it comes to entrepreneurship and building wealth. Very privileged tonight to be here with two individuals that I've been working with for a few years. And Pastor Smith did a great job highlighting their skills and their accomplishments and their continued growth in the business that they founded, Unboxed. I met those two individuals that were mentioned about 3 years ago, and they presented their company's technology to me at the time that I was president of U.S. operations for UPS, and it was as simple as it could be for me, knowing that we needed some type of technology to assist us in our business, and I'll let them talk about what that is. But from that point on, we developed a relationship that continues to this day, and I'm very proud of both these two individuals. And you heard their educational backgrounds in Pastor Smith's opening, so I won't go through that. But that being said, they leveraged opportunity. And they leveraged opportunity into the area of technology, which is an area of business that has far too few Black Americans as participants. So I just want to tell you a short story about my travels in this e-commerce space, which I've done for over 20 years. It really, when you look at e-commerce, it's a very young environment. Around 1995 or so, when the internet really began to allow people to participate in growing a business in that environment. Since then, over the last 20 years, it's accelerated in ways that no one ever saw coming. Well, some people did, but most didn't. So I'll correct myself on that. The ones who saw the opportunity coming made a quick use of it. And that would be individuals like Jeff Bezos with Amazon, Michael Dell with Dell Computer. Those are a couple of the big names. When you talk about leveraging the space. Certainly Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg leveraged the space in 2006. Today, Facebook is one of the biggest companies in the world, and it's only 16 years old. And you can compare that to companies like UPS, that's 100 plus years old, almost 115 years old, I guess would be somewhere around the number, where that UPS are 115 years old. And Facebook is 16 years old and worth 10 times the value of UPS. So we're here to talk about the opportunities in e-commerce and in technology. And so I want you to think about a couple of things as you listen to that opening. And I said I had a story, and I want you to really think about this story. I met this individual named Dan about 8 years ago. And in a typical year, I would visit over 100, 150 clients for UPS. And the large majority of those clients were in the e-commerce space, say 90%. Dan was in the e-commerce space. He was selling products online. And what Dan was selling online were bicycles. The bicycles that Dan was selling, he and his son would spend their weekends going to garage sales. And they would buy as many used bikes as they could possibly find for as little as $1 a bicycle. And if the bike was very nice, they might pay $25 or $30 for it. And if it was a racing bike, of course, it would go for a bit more, but certainly not the $2,000 to $5,000 that you buy it for online. They could get that bike for as little as $500 in the case of that. And they would take the bikes they purchased and put them in a shipping container that they rented. And the rent on the shipping container was pretty cheap. It went about $200 a month. And once the container was full of bikes, they could get around 400 bikes in this container. They would ship the container to a variety of countries in Europe, because there's communities in Europe, like in the Netherlands or Amsterdam, that's how they get around. They don't use vehicles. Bicycle travel is 90% of how they get around. And I've been to Amsterdam and seen it up close, so I know. And then he would sell these bicycles to a broker in Amsterdam who was happy to get them. And his investment typically in a month would be around $4,000 to buy bicycles and rent containers. And he would ship that container to the Netherlands for $1,200. And the person on the other end would pay him $110,000 for 400 bicycles. So he was making a profit of $4,000 of $100,000. And he had been doing that for years. And all he did was get a shopping cart initially, like on eBay or some of the sites. And today there's a plethora of them. And he would sell bicycles on his shopping cart initially. And then he had the idea that he would export them. That's what entrepreneurship is. It's not an amazing idea. It's just pursuing an idea. And e-commerce is about leveraging into the internet in order to reach people that you would never be able to around the world. I could tell story after story after story like that. Whether it's a golf club, a basketball, t-shirts, things that are simple to get and do and simple to sell to the world, not to your neighborhood. But as I visited over 2,000 clients from 2005 to 2016 in Southern California, I never met one Black entrepreneur leveraging the internet. Now, when you meet 2,000 different business people, you just got to figure by chance you're going to meet one. Well, I didn't. It's very obvious to me why the Black community is not exploding in wealth like so many other immigrant communities. I've met Armenians, Lithuanians, people from Italy that came to America recently, and certainly from China and Taiwan, that had less than 10 years in this country and had achieved millionaire status through very meager products like linens, pillowcases, mattresses, and they were making away on the most unracially biased place you're ever going to see, and that is the internet. Because the fact of the matter is that the person buying from you on the other side does not know who you are. They don't know what color you are. They don't know your socioeconomic status. They don't even know where you live. So when you talk about being successful, it offers just a tremendous opportunity for the Black community to create generational wealth. E-commerce has grown to the point where today it's $1 trillion being sold on the internet in America today, and that number is expected to triple by 2030. The average growth of e-commerce yearly is 18.7% since 2001, over 20 years. The US economy grows at like 3 to 4%. So e-commerce grows at a 6 times rate, a 6 times CAGR rate. And I want you to remember that word CAGR, combined annual growth of revenue, CAGR. E-commerce grows 6 times faster than the economy. There's 6 times as much opportunity, bottom line. So hopefully that narrative inspires you a bit more to think about what can you do to build a business using e-commerce as your platform. I want to turn it over now to the 2 young entrepreneurs that are on the call, Kendra and Hakeem, so they can talk about their story and their journey using their technology platform to build a business.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Super excited to be here. One of the biggest things is that I want to say is thank you, first off, to the Urban League of Los Angeles for inviting Kendra and myself to be here. Reverend Gerald, Jacinda, you guys have put on an amazing program. And then also Noah is someone that is like a mentor, almost a second father figure to me at times. He reminds me a lot of my father, very, very to the point, and saw a lot of growth in myself and Kendra, and saw a lot of talent in us. And so we're looking forward to sharing a little bit about our story. But the first thing before we get into and tell you guys about our background, how we achieved what we've achieved today, which we know that we have a long way to go, is that this is our story, right? There may be certain components to this that you can certainly learn from and take with you and apply to your own lives and your own journeys. But always understand that it's a personal walk. If you're an entrepreneur, it's a personal walk. It can be extremely lonely. So you have to first understand yourself, understand what resonates with you, understand your values, and then run in the direction of your choosing. So that's first that we would just want to make sure that we say, is that we understand that we may be the presenters, we may look at us in a position of authority, like we have it figured out. We don't, and we're learning to this day, and we continue to remain humble and extremely consistent and hungry. So with that, I'll turn it over to my co-founder, Kendra Ward.
Hello, everybody, and thank you all for attending and taking the time to listen to us. So I'm going to get into my background, and then we're going to go into a little bit about the company after Hakeem speaks. So for me, I was born in California. I was raised in Atlanta, Georgia by my mother. I was not going to go to a private school, but I did. I went to Spelman College, and I went to the University of Southern California, respectively, as they mentioned. I was fortunate enough to get the Gates Millennium Scholar, the scholarship. And so that itself was the start of some of my triumphs through my tribulations. And so for me, I had applied for the Gates Millennium Scholarship. I went to Spelman College, and I started to learn a lot about the soft skills of understanding people. But if I rewind it back, I want to say that this came full circle for me, leadership. So our platform is about leadership. But while I was younger, I took a course, and they asked me, what does it mean to be a leader? What does it take to be a leader? And so everyone answered, and they said, you have to be diligent. You got to be intelligent. You got to be charismatic. And everyone gave these different attributes of leaders. But the first thing that you have to do to be a leader is you have to choose every day. You have to choose to be diligent. You have to choose to be intelligent. And so that's something that has carried me throughout my journey, especially now within entrepreneurship, of making sure that I'm making the right choice every day for myself, but then also for my company.
And hello, everyone. Again, my name is Hakeem Atwater. I'm originally from Raleigh, North Carolina, although I was born in Columbus, Ohio. Kept moving south. So I'm the youngest of three. Always had this larger than life kind of mentality. My mom has home videos where I used to yell at her because she would say, give me those little hands. And I would yell at her and say, I ain't got little hands. I got big hands. And so I always had this kind of larger than life type of mentality. I was the youngest, which means I got beat up a lot by my older cousins from Philadelphia and Virginia. So resilience was something that I learned very young. And also how to play the dozens and to keep things light. So fast forwarding a bit, went to Morehouse College. That's where I met Kendra Ward. I studied accounting while I was there. My background post-grad was in banking. So initially I went into investment banking, doing leverage buyouts and healthcare. So like M&A activity before our bank was moving to a more verticalized approach, which means that we were being more industry focused. Raised my hand because the bank said, hey, we need someone, a junior resource, to go and live in LA for free. And I said, you mean you got to convince someone to do that? And so I raised my hand, and I was on the first flight out to Los Angeles, being the junior resource, helping us build our technology, media, and telecom group. And during that time, saw an opportunity where I thought that we can invest in what I call quasi startups. So that's organizations that are doing billions of dollars in revenue. No mention some of these companies, right? Think about Facebook early on, Amazon early on, back in 1994, 1998, pre-IPO, right? These were the types of companies that I was saying that, look, like they have a great business model. We can invest in them and set up fees later on. I was loud enough in the room that someone believed in me and built trust and credibility internally. And they said, go and build it. And that was the impetus for Unbox. But before we kind of go into unboxing what it is, one of the biggest things is that I want you guys to take from this is that we're a values-based organization. And so the biggest thing that you have to understand, kind of what I mentioned before, is about what's your journey look like? What is your pathway to success? No mention the guy that was selling bicycles, right? That's not a sexy business, right? Everyone thinks that they want to build the next autonomous vehicle, the next cool social media platform. But at the end of the day, that may not be the opportunity, and that may not be what you're most passionate about. And the way that you find that, and the way that you discover that, at least from my journey and Kendra's journey, there's 3 questions that my parents used to have on the mirror that I had to confront every morning as a kid. The first question was, who am I? The second question was, am I really who I am? So first is that, who am I? Who am I as an individual? The second part is that, am I really who I am? So that's like a buffer, right? I think I'm this person, but am I really that person? And then the third thing is, am I all out to be? So that's about growth, right? And so when you're starting an organization, the first thing is that you want to understand is that, who are you as an individual? What type of business resonates with you? Me and Kendra, things that she kind of omits from the story, and she jokes about this a lot, and I'm questionable whether I want to give Noel this ammunition, because I know he's going to tell jokes about it later. But we used to always talk about business ideas. That was how me and Kendra connected. We used to sit outside the club. I'm Greek. I joined a fraternity. One of my frat brothers was dating one of Kendra's best friends, but they were always the type that wanted to stay in the party too long, right? Is that they wanted to stay until the lights came on. Me and Kendra were like, look, guys, we came out, we had fun, let's go. And so we used to stand outside and we used to talk about different business ideas I had. So fast forward, I'm in corporate. She's at Goldman at the time, and she tells me this idea. And she said, hey, Akeem, I have this idea about if you could sync up your TVs, right? Imagine if you were watching Netflix and I was watching Netflix, but we were in different cities. And when you walk out of the room, the TV automatically stopped. So then you don't have to worry about someone laughing before it gets to the part of you asking questions. And I said, well, Kendra, I don't really like the idea. I had a girlfriend at the time. I said, you know what? I'll ask her, because maybe I'm not your audience. And what ended up happening was that we ultimately told Kendra, I was like, I don't really like the idea, but here to support you if you want to run down that pathway. Ultimately, she didn't. So that goes back to, what are you passionate about? But 6 months later, she sends me an article about a company that sold for hundreds of millions of dollars to Netflix. And it was her exact idea, right? So they saw an opportunity, again, not sexy, but it was something that those founders, similar to Kendra, saw a business opportunity and was passionate about. It was something that they saw that they could be consistent in and run with. So to me, it was that there was dating apps that I had ideas with, right? That wasn't something I was extremely passionate about. I'm really bad at dating, right? Why would I build the next social dating platform, right? So ultimately is that, again, who am I? You need to ask yourself that on your journey to being an entrepreneur, is because if the idea doesn't resonate with you, if you're not passionate about it, if you're not passionate about the market, that is a recipe for disaster. And so the first thing, and the 3 values that I want to kind of leave you with before we kind of go more into the company, was that we always kept to was humility, consistency, and sacrifice. And so if I can, just to tie it all together in Noel's story, there was ways that the guy that bought bicycles, he probably could have bought a bunch of $100 bicycles, $1,000 bicycles, right? Because it was sexier. He probably was it was a different buyer, different community, but that wasn't right for his business, right? So it took sacrifice for him to understand, and also a bit of understanding of business, right? And economics, for him to say, like, that's not the right approach for me to run with. The second thing is about creating value. So that's what you have to create value. If you're not creating value, if you do not find something, as my dad used to always say, it's a hobby, right? He used to joke with us. He would say, my brother, he wanted to sell candy, and my brother would sell his candy and lose more money than he actually gained, right? That's not a business at that point. That's a hobby. And really, you should run from that hobby, because you're going to go broke. So you have to be able to create value. And then from that value creation, there's an exchange there called revenue. And then the third thing is humility. And so that's why we're at this juncture today. How we've met Noel was the ability to see that, look, we have talent, we're consistent, we're going to make the sacrifice. And when you get to that place, that's where people are going to pull you up, where you're constantly going to get in the rooms, and you're going to constantly have people that are going to want to help you along the way on your journey, because you've already proven yourself. You know exactly where you're going. You know who you are. You've already done the buffer, and now you've created a business that's worth talking about and sharing. And so, Kendra, I'll hand it back to you. We could talk a little bit about inception to where we're at today with the organization.
Of course. And I just want to throw in there is that I never thought that I would be an entrepreneur. I saw, as Noel said, you know, people selling the bikes or people with the incense, right? I didn't think they were entrepreneurs. I thought they were just trying to take someone's money. But now along this journey, I'm learning what it really means to be an entrepreneur and that how it comes in different shapes, forms, or fashion. But I'm learning exactly what it means to be an entrepreneur within the SaaS business.
Yeah, I think if I could interject just one comment is for the audience to understand that you see these companies don't let people come through their doors that don't understand their business.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, these companies don't let people in their doors that don't behave in a way that shows they are absolutely knowledgeable, professional, and competent.
Yeah.
And, you know, I want to destroy the myth that because you're Black, you can't get through these doors.
Yeah.
That's a myth. And sometimes myths can be producing in terms of stigmatisms.
Yeah.
You know, so if you have a stigmatism that you can't get through the door of a Fortune 500 company, then you can't, because you're the barrier. What's in your head is the barrier. Kendra and Hakeem did it because they navigated through, and you say, well, yeah, no, you're Black and they're a Black mentor. The person that introduced Kendra to me was a white female who I had a relationship with named Renee Frazier, who owns a communication company called Frazier Communications. You can Google that. And she was a mentor of Kendra's. And she says, hey, I know a guy that you should meet. That is the president of US operations for UPS. And what you're doing fits his company.
Yeah.
And that's how we met. Go ahead, Kendra.
No, that's perfectly right. And this banner says trusted by, because we had to build that trust that he's talking about to get into the doors. And Hakeem likes to talk about it. Trust within two sides, right? Hakeem, do you want to tell them about that? Two sides.
Yeah. So I can't say that this is a Hakeem quote, but there's this book called Speed of Trust. And in the book, he talked about the idea of how trust is two-sided, character and competence. And the simplest way I can put that is there's people in your family that you would probably trust to watch your child, right? You trust their character. On the second side, some of those same family members, if you had to put the report together for a customer, for a client, you absolutely would not trust them to put that report together. Doesn't mean that you don't trust them, their character, but from a competence level, they may not have had the experience to be able to deliver. And so for us is that when you think about trust of character and competence, character got us through the door. To Noel's point, character will get you through the door. Competence is what's going to keep you there. You have to understand and teach them something about their business. You have to have a business that actually aligns to something that's mission critical to the organization. So if you go and going back to Noel's point, not to belabor this, but I think a lot of times entrepreneurs I talk to who look like us, they want to either build the same type of businesses or they have circles talking about why they haven't achieved what they have achieved or what their counterparts achieved. For us is that you have to have this competitive mindset. So if you're in a race and I have 30 hurdles in front of me and my competition has 2, am I going to sit there and complain about, hey, they only have 2 hurdles? No, if you want to win the race, you jump over those hurdles as fast as you can and you try to get to the finish line. It's about winning. So it's not about being naive and understanding that we're like to Noel's point earlier, he said that all the business, that's if you do the math on that, I believe, Noel, you said 150 businesses that you met with a year. That's maybe about what, 2,000 or 20,000 maybe businesses throughout your time at the president of UPS. He mentioned one that looked like us, right? So yes, you may be breaking barriers down, but that can't be the thing to stop you. If you believe in this, right? And you know who you are, consistency, you have to show up, right? You're not going to feel motivated every day. That's a myth. You're not going to wake up every day and say, man, I'm motivated. Let's go and get it. But you do have to show up every day. And that's something that you have to understand, is that it's about being consistent in your journey, because you know that you have something to offer. You know that you have value to create. And if you're convinced of that and have that conviction, then there's nothing that you will not be able to achieve.
In 2018, we knew that we had value to create, and we figured that out. We were founded in a accelerator in Atlanta, Georgia, February 14th. I like to tell that date because I think it's very special. It was during that time that we had some really big name clients that trusted us, but we had to tell them no. So when he talks about values, when he talks about knowing your journey and knowing who you are, every customer is not going to be the customer for you. And we had to realize that early on. We thought we were going to be a millionaire right out the gate, right? Oh, wow, we get this contract, but we had to realize that that customer was going to take us somewhere that all of our actual target would not. And so we had to say no. So that is a very big part in 2018. We had to understand our customer. And with that, we came up with Unboxed. And so Unboxed is a tool that helps managers become leaders. And so it's simply stated is that not everyone is a leader, but everyone can possibly be a manager. But a leader and a manager are different, because a leader understands how to motivate you. A leader understands how to have a conversation with you. A leader is there to help guide you through your journey. And so that's what we're helping individuals do. And so it was in 2018 that we decided that we are going to help managers become better leaders.
Yeah. And going into 2019 is that's when we started to conceptualize what we wanted to build. Everyone has this concept of overnight success that, hey, look, I'm going to launch an idea. I'm going to go raise millions of dollars of funding. And then eureka, I'm going to hit it big, right? That's not the reality of it, right? It's going to take time. It's going to take twice as long. And when you talk about it, there's probably going to be questions about how we capitalized our business, what capital we raised. Did we raise venture funding? We haven't. So Kendra and I have not had to raise venture funding to this date, and we own the majority lion's share of our company outside of the accelerator that we were founded in. And that's because, again, we understood that we have to build a business first. And so 2018, 2019, we couldn't accelerate production. So we were a product organization, but there was a lot of manual components, right? So we didn't have a lot of automation. Kendra and I would stay up all night and put together these detailed reports for managers. I mean, like, we weren't sleeping. It was because we understood that these managers had to have their reports by the next day, right? So we understood that we had to deliver. And that's why we were able to have 100%. And to this day, I've had 100% customer retentions, because we've been able to deliver. So in our first two and a half years of our company, we were a service organization with a really, I'll call crappy product, but they call it MVP, meaning minimum viable product. So that's just the simplest form of whatever you're going to develop. And then you go through the iterative process of making it more sophisticated. So for us is that it was very manual at the front end. And then by 2020, Q4 of 2020 is when we were able to turn the corner and really launch the enterprise technology that we've been able to deploy in UPS and Amazon and a couple other large names, is because we now had the ability to scale, right? And so when you talk about e-commerce, when you talk about B2B, meaning business to business type of organizations, technology type companies, the barriers to entry are at an all-time low. You don't have to go and buy server space. You don't have to have any of the things that you had to have back in the 90s and early 2000s, right? So there's so many, even from a security standpoint, you have Amazon, you have Microsoft, you have so many opportunities to be able to reduce the cost of your business of operating e-commerce business or B2B software company. And so going back to 2020, that was our year of being able to launch our software. And being able to get a couple of users, meaning end users, teams, like for them to touch and feel it and give us feedback, right? So a lot of times you have this vision of what you're going to become, what the actual platform should be, but you're not building a tool for yourself, right? Hopefully not. Like, you may want to be building, for us, we're building a tool that we use internally just because of the nature of our business. However, it's about the customer, right? So it's about what does the customer need, and does the customer find value from this tool or whatever service or product that I'm delivering to them? And so that was 2020 for us to be able to gain that feedback. And I was able to direct our product roadmap. And then going to April of last year, we were able to shut down our services business and then go full-fledged product and go to a product business, which just means our delivery system and the way our pricing model transition. Instead of us billing someone for our time, we're billing someone for access to a technology platform. So it's just the way the billing is set up. When I say going from service to product business, that's the only transition that's the distinguishing characteristic, is how you're billing the customer and how you're providing the value to the customer. So now we're able to provide it at scale, and the timing worked out because that was around the time when we had met No, and No had made a couple of introductions. We were able to scale, and we call UPS our anchor customer, as well as we were able to get a couple other large customers like Amazon and Comcast to trust in us as young entrepreneurs.
Right. And what you'll notice is that within this timeline, you'll see that we had an idea. First thing is to have an idea.
Yeah.
Then the thing is going to be, does it work? A lot of people take money at does it work? We chose not to. So what that looked like was living at our parents' house, right? It looked like, maybe having a part-time job at night. That's what that looked like for us, because we wanted to make sure and we wanted to validate, does our tool actually work? From there, you'll see from this timeline, you'll see that now it's about scale. Can we scale it? What does that look like? And that's the phase that we're currently in. And scaling is more than just with the customer. Scaling is also about scaling your company. It's about your team members. It's about the right players at the table, knowing who to bring, when to bring. So a lot does go into it, but I just want to say that if you take the time to really think about who you are, it will help for making sure that you're building the right business for you.
Yeah, if we could, we want to leave about 15 to 20 minutes for comment, for questions. So if we can land this piece in the next couple of minutes, that would be great.
Well, that's perfect. That's the last of it. So going into like who you are, when me and Kendra, we always joke is that we knew where we were, how we were going to get there before we even knew where we were going. So when we sat down, our stories, we were able to look at each other and say, okay, who do we want to represent? Who do we want to be? Right. So that's what I meant at the beginning of this presentation when I said, who are you? Are you really who you are? And are you all that you ought to be? And that we're a value-based organization is because we were able to create these values before we even had customers at scale. And so ultimately, what we want to ask you all is that, what are your goals? So
yeah, go back to the slide you just left. I want to make a point to the audience. The miss that I see so many make who are thinking about starting their own business.
Yeah.
Is they start the business for the wrong reasons. And this is important as participants that you understand that when people start a business or an endeavor, the first thing they think about is how much money they can make. Let me just give you a quote I heard 30 plus years ago, actually longer. If you work for money and money alone, there is no better way not to get it. I'm gonna say that again. If you work for money and money alone, there is no better way not to get it. The founder of UPS made that quote, Jim Casey. Here's what he was saying. You work for values. You work for passion. You commit to a thing. That in and of itself, if your goal is to being the best, will take care of itself. Okay. Michael Jordan didn't go spend hours and hours and hours at 11 for any other reason to be the very best basketball player in the world. And the rest took care of itself.
Exactly.
Mark Zuckerberg didn't spend hours and hours and hours and hours learning how to code because he was going to create Facebook. The hours and hours and hours he spent to be the best at coding gave him a passion for coding, and the idea came later. Mark Zuckerberg didn't have to be black to create Facebook. or be white to create Facebook. I'm sorry. He didn't have to be white to create Facebook. Jeff Bezos didn't have to be white to create Amazon.
Right.
They had to be passionate about an idea.
Right.
And I saw that happen time and time and time again. So what I want you to take away is Kendra and Hakeem have been successful in their pursuit because of that bottom right box. We commit to being the best. And their relationship with me is all about that. Early on, 3 years ago, as I engaged with them and we started talking about directionally where they were headed, they knew that our agreement was about one thing and one thing alone, that bottom right box. And that's who they are as individuals. And I really wanted to put that in before we transition to the next slide. Go ahead.
Well, ultimately, now it's about opening up for questions, and just wanted to leave you guys with this. I think it's a perfect segue from Noel, is that ask yourself, who are you? Are you really who I am, or who you are, and are you all you ought to be? So ask yourself those questions. Are you doing it for the right reason? If you're not, then you need to reassess. And that's okay if you're not, or if you feel like you're not, just reassess and redirect. You're going to have pivots in your business. That's okay. It's not going to be linear.
And I see we have a question in the chat, Akeem, and it says, what did the incubator provide? You want to take that question?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing, and Kendra, we could maybe tackle this together, is that I would say the first thing the incubator provided was validation. Like, I still remember that, like, we were driving you across the country and we had to stop to Tina Simmons is the senior vice president of HR at corporate Comcast, NBC Universal. And she came to head their largest division, which is Central Division, which just happened to be headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. And we stopped to take her call because they were starting an accelerator. And we had this business idea, and we had Kendra had finally quit Oracle. We were going across the country, and her little, it's not a punch buggy, but it was a, we didn't even know if we were going to make it. And we remember we had to pull off in like Texas, in like this no name place. And we didn't know if we were going to have service. We were worried. We were outside of a diner, and we pretty much pitched Tina on our idea. She was on the selection committee. It was a long shot because neither one of us are vetted HR professionals. We didn't really have any true traction. We just pitched her, and she said, this is what we're going to create. This is what we're going to do. And it resonated with her instantly. And so for, if nothing else, it provided validation for us. And then going back to the winning and the value that Noel brought out is that we went into the accelerator with one goal. We, like everyone else, went in with raise capital. We started talking to our peers. They were going to raise capital. They were going to do all these grand ideas. We went in with one. I remember, Kendra, we said, this is just one goal of this accelerator. For this next 12 weeks, our only goal is to get Comcast as a customer. That was it. We didn't have any goal for raising capital. We didn't have goal for meeting anyone else. And then we created an opportunity to meet Tina, to meet her team, pitch them, and then they were one of our first customers. Tina is one of our advisory committee, is on our advisory committee today. So again, like, it goes back to focus, but that's what it provided for us, was validation, not only for our business, that kind of feel good, that thrust to say this is something that's needed, because we're pitching to someone that's at the height of their career. And then the second thing was provided revenue for us. Remember, great revenue.
Yeah, but you know, they're leaving out a really important point for the audience. Number one, their tool addresses a pain point.
Right.
You can't pitch me anything that doesn't help me get better.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for the audience to understand that if you were to develop a technology solution, everything's not an app. And I think there's too much of that. Develop an app for the solution. You can do that, but they looked at a company and said, what is a pain point you have? What can I code to alleviate the pain point? And they did that. And so when they pitched the idea, because it was addressing a pain point, there was attention given to it. I think that's a really important thing. You can go to any company in America. You can walk in a restaurant tomorrow and say, can I talk to the owner? The owner comes out, you go, can you tell me what your biggest pain point is? He's going to have one. You can go into any business and say, tell me your pain point. And they're gonna have pain points. The question becomes, can you solve it for them? And you may not be able to write the program, but you can create the idea to get someone to write the program for you. But you have to identify their pain point. What's painful for me? I'm a tire company. I put tires on cars. I'm a service bay. I fix vehicles. I just picked up my car today from my service mechanic, right? In a 64 Mustang. And what is my pain point? What is your pain point, Mr. Automotive Supply Guy that runs a shop? Now, the challenge for you is, are you passionate enough to solve it? Right. And Kendra and Hakeem were.
Definitely. Did you want to add something, Kendra, or we go to the next question?
Yes, I was just going to ask. I remember when Hakeem brought the idea to me, being the youngest AVP, having to lead a team. He pitched me in Vegas out with other coworkers at another company about how big this problem was. And then from that next step, the next step about having that pain is going to be able to reach that customer. So we met our customer where they were. We made sure we put ourselves in the right places at the right times to make sure we could meet them. So if that meant us going to lunch at the same time, we were going to be at lunch at the same time at that point. We did our research. That's the first point that I was trying to make.
Our next question is, what has been your proudest moment as co-founders of Unboxed?
Kendra, I'll let you go first.
Proudest moment? Oh man, I'd have to say just inception. Because there was a lot that went before getting the paperwork saying that we were a C Corp, getting the paperwork. There was a lot of work that goes into making sure that you have a problem. There's a lot of work that goes in, or even money to having to start the business. And so for me, the proudest moment was actually going forward with it. You can have many ideas, but if there is no action, then it just kind of falls to the wayside. So that's the proudest moment. Outside of that, it's going to be, I'm pretty sure I'm waiting on the next one.
Yeah, I'll say for myself is that I'm a bit insatiable. So I'm always like, what's next? And I'm always looking at the next thing, even like when we achieve something or blow something out the water. So like, if I had to answer your question, I would say is that finding the balance between the two. My dad asked me this question recently about, am I a player or am I a coach? And I say, I'm a player. And I understand that in this junction in our business, we have to go to being more coaches. Kendra and I, as we build out the team. And I would say listening to my co-founder, where she mentioned and she talked to me, she had an intimate conversation with me. And she said, look, like sometimes that in those moments where like we win and the team is super excited, you're like, you celebrate for 5 seconds, but and then you're just like, okay, guys, like what's next? Like, let's go. Let's get back at it, and how that can make people feel. And so I think that for me is that transition to being a coach, that was one of my proudest moments of that. It's a process to being where I can call myself a great coach, but Kendra being resilient and sharing that and constantly telling me, because I am a little hard-headed, or I'll say headstrong in that moment where I'm just very competitive. And so like listening to my co-founder and in certain moments being able to stop, sit back, and us appreciate moments of where we're at in our business. So I would say that's been my proudest moment, is in those micro moments of seeing that, wow, like I'm growing as a leader, because I really do want to build a great organization and to be a great leader too, not just a great player.
So when I met the two of you, how many employees did you have in 2019?
Well, we have 3.
That's a number. That's not a long answer, because you know you like long answers, Hakeem. How many people did you have in 2019?
3.
How many do you have today?
9 full time.
Right. So your company's grown 300% in employees, and you have 9 people working for you in your company today.
Yeah.
So you've created, you had 1 other than the 2 of you. And so you've created 7 white collar positions and jobs in America. It's important people hear that.
Yes, that's definitely something to be proud of. Definitely. Is there anyone else with questions? Anyone out there that has an e-commerce business? You can put your questions in the Q&A prompt at the bottom right.
While they're doing that, I'd also like to say that outside of those jobs, if there's anyone that has any cousins, nieces, nephews, youngers, we do have a lot of internships that we provide. We love to go to Spelman and Morehouse, but if there are others that you may know, we also like to provide internships. So
Kendra, they're in LA. You could tell the truth. Kendra loves Trojans, USC.
that's it.
Like, so if anyone on this call is from University of South Carolina, Kendra does not, she doesn't like listen to you. Yeah, the only USC is Trojans.
Do we have any other questions, Jacinda?
No other questions. Don't be shy, people. You guys are still on, I see.
This is
I'm
Reverend Gerald.
Go ahead. I was gonna take the opportunity to do one exercise before we finish because I know we're getting close.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, we're okay on time. I was, this is a great success story, and these are two great young passionate people, and I'm sure there may be people out there that have ideas about starting an e-commerce business and are wondering if what their idea is really fits, or what the benefits of pursuing that idea from an e-commerce perspective is. And Noel mentioned some of this earlier, but when you start an online business, you're opening yourself up to be involved in a faster buying process. You have cost reduction. You don't have brick and mortar. You don't have a lot of big bills to tackle from the very beginning. With social media being what it is, your advertising and marketing all of a sudden becomes affordable. You're flexible. Your customer can come from your backyard, it can come from across the world. And there's no limits to the amount of people you can reach with this e-commerce business. And there's no boundaries that stymites you and keeps your people from responding fast. And the biggest thing, there's several payment modes that you'll be able to access with an e-commerce business. So those of you who are listening and who have the idea, those are just some of the advantages and some of the opportunities that await you if you enter the e-commerce space.
Yeah, I think the point, the proof in the pudding, when I would lecture at college campuses, and I did a few dozen of those, I would always leave the students with a real checkpoint around becoming an entrepreneur. You got to crawl before you walk, before you run. But the most important thing is if you think you can, you can. And if you don't think you can, you never will. And the fact of the matter is that I'm sure everyone, I see there's like 30 something people on this thing, and hopefully all of you have a smartphone. So I like everyone that's on this call, including the people I can see, Gerald, Jacinda, Hakeem, Kendra, everyone on this call, to pick up their smartphone right now. Just pick it up in your hand. I worked for IBM as an intern in 1976 when I was in college. And I'd go in this room and it would have hundreds of servers in there. These were computers like you could, that were just rows of them. That phone in your hand today is more powerful by 1,000 times than all of those computers I saw when I was in college. That's how much power is in your hand. It's called the cloud. So I want you to take, if you're wearing a piece of jewelry or a watch, take a picture of it right now with your phone. Take a picture of it right now with your phone. I'd like you to do that. Take a picture right now with your smartphone of a watch or a piece of jewelry you're wearing or even an item on your desk. Take a picture of it. Now, you could take that picture and within 2 minutes, you could go to Yahoo shopping carts, Amazon shopping carts, eBay shopping carts within 2 minutes and put it online for sale. You could go to Facebook Marketplace and put it online for sale.
Yeah.
The minute someone buys it from you, you are an entrepreneur. You could know someone like I met who made dolls for a living, black dolls. It was her own unique art. And she couldn't figure out how to get it in the marketplace. She's thinking to go to flea markets. And I'm like, you have the biggest flea market in the world right in your hand. Anyone that is saying I'm gonna isn't. You know, don't live on someday, you know, an island. You have islands and then you have isles, right? You know, the Isle of whatever, the Isle of this. Don't live on someday isle. Someday isle. Don't live on someday isle. I think that's what really is the paralyzing point that I see happening in the Black community. Is there's this channel you can be successful through, and for whatever reason, people think it takes this great knowledge to get through it. It just doesn't. It takes making a commitment to learn it and do it. And I've seen some amazing things there that can be leveraged and taken advantage of. And if anything, I wanted to leave the group with just this one comment. You can't ever hope to get more out of life than you give. You just can't hope to. If you don't study, don't expect to get an A. If you don't save money, don't expect to be rich. You can't hope to ever get more than you give. It's universal. It's just universal. It applies to every facet of our lives, every single one. So Kendra and Hakeem have given enough. So they've benefited because they haven't hoped to gain more than they were willing to put in. And that is the story at the end of the day. And e-commerce can help you build a great one. That's all I have, Pastor Gerald. Thank you.
Okay,
Yes,
if there anybody, I see a couple, looks like a
Yes.
couple more came in Q&A, Jacinda.
Yes, Joanne Knox, well, she doesn't have a question, but she just wants to say that she is proud of you all. She really enjoys you all's story. It's very powerful. Another attendee asks, for both Kendra and Hakeem, would you ever consider not being an entrepreneur?
Oh, I wouldn't. It's entrepreneurship is you sink or swim, and understanding myself. That's going to be the best way for me to grow exponentially. I'm doggy paddling. I'm gonna learn how to swim while I'm in the water, and I'm gonna make it out. But no, I wouldn't choose any other way. I feel like I would be coddled somewhere else.
Yeah, I have to echo for Kendra. And I would say that there's people that are working in corporate right now. There's blueprints that you can learn there. Like we've all most successful entrepreneurs have worked in corporate, right? And they've learned something there because there was a reason why they were successful. Noel talked about UPS's history of over a century, right? There's something you can learn there. And so like, even if you talk about my time at Fifth Third, I was able to carve out an opportunity or niche for myself because I was what they'll call an intrapreneur, right? So I think whether I'm in corporate, we get acquired and I'm working for larger organization, or I go back to corporate, or even if I go into education, or regardless where I go, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, right? By the concept of trying to create value. And I think that's all entrepreneurs do. And they create value with absolute resilience and passion. And if they can see the vision, now it's about doing my due diligence, making sure that I understand the problem properly. And then now I'm convicted. Now it's just about, I have to run. And so I can't help that I'm programmed like this. So no, you gotta blame my parents, my mom and my dad, for the way I am. that's yeah.
Earlier, you all mentioned about internships. Is there a contact that you all can provide, and I can repost it for you in the chat?
How about you just reach out to, I would say reach out to Kendra or myself directly. So if you have our emails, Jacinda, if not, Kendra, can you drop it really quickly?
Yeah.
Just reach out to us directly, because we always try to have a fall, a summer, and a spring intern, depending on your level of experience. And so whether you're in college or even if you're in high school, it may be more like shadowing experience, but if you're in college, we try to give you real world experience. And depending on the institution you're at, you can actually get college credits for it. And so yeah, please reach out to myself or Kendra, and you're gonna get a whirlwind of an experience from because you're gonna be in the trenches with us.
Definitely. And you know, in this day and age, will these internships be virtual? So that means anyone from around the United States could to benefit from this.
Absolutely. Yeah, they'll be virtual. And then sometimes Kendra's really big on team building and us being like, and I think there's something to be said about being in person to camaraderie. And so for in the ultimate experience. So if depending on where you're at, we definitely would fly you out to Atlanta, being that's where we're headquartered. And we get a meal, break bread, and you would be able to see it. Like we'd be able to like really get to see each other, interact in person. And I'd be able to beat you at spades, or me and Kendra would be able to beat you at spades or Uno or whatever game of your choosing.
I love it. I love it.
Right.
Is there any more questions?
If there are no more questions, we're going to turn it over to Brian Williams, VP and COO of the Los Angeles Urban League. But before Brian gives us his closing remarks, that question about would you ever want to be anything other than an entrepreneur? When that question got asked, it took me to a point in my life when I decided to be an entrepreneur. And one thing I will tell all of you, and particularly if you're a millennial or in the younger generation, you don't have to be without a job to be an entrepreneur. That's one thing that's great about e-commerce and some of the other things that people are doing today. You can start your business and still keep your job. And the only reason I mention that is because if you're young and you aspire to buy property and do other things, unfortunately, banks look at you very differently when you are an entrepreneur that's not generating a whole lot of revenue than when you have a good paying job. So be passionate about what you do, as they say, pick your spots. But the good thing about e-commerce is you can put your feet in the water while you still have some revenue to sustain you. Brian?
Hey, great point, Reverend Gerald. Thank you. And thank you and the whole team that put on this amazing BWARP series. Started last year, it's continuing this year, and thank you so much. And thank you especially to our speakers today, Noel and Hakeem and Kendra, for sharing your time and your talents with our audience. I really appreciate you sharing your insights and kind of sharing the secret sauce, if you will, of what has made your company successful and helped you to create this amazing opportunity out of Atlanta. So congrats to all of you on that. So I want to leave you audience members with a few thoughts. The main thing is that we're now in the midst of the greatest transfer of intergenerational wealth that the world has ever seen. And what that means is that the baby boom generation, those people who are now in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, as those people pass on and leave their wealth to subsequent generations, first, they're going out with a bang. They're spending lots of money on goods and services. Much of those goods and services are being purchased, obviously, online via e-commerce. So there's a huge opportunity with selling products and services to people. And also, as they transfer that wealth to their kids and their grandkids, those people aren't just sitting on the money or putting it in, 0.nothing bank account, 0.nothing interest earning bank accounts. They're also buying goods and services. So there's this amazing confluence of events. You have this huge transfer of intergenerational wealth. At the same time, you have an explosion of e-commerce. Like Noel said, the e-commerce sales are going to increase by threefold over the next 10 years, from 1 trillion to about 3 trillion. So that makes for a huge opportunity. There are also all these other new technologies, the metaverse, the transition to virtual work, that are creating huge opportunities for young entrepreneurs, Black entrepreneurs, who can take advantage of what I call the democratizing influence of technology, that colorblind technology that Noel was referring to. So now is the time to figure out a niche, become expert in your field. And I know that seems like a lot and it's a mouthful to think about, but you're not alone. So the Urban League is here to be helpful to you. The Urban League has an amazing entrepreneurship center. It's run by two amazing gentlemen, both with advanced degrees, tons of experience in business and in law. And we have a whole host of specialist consultants who can help you in whatever area of business you don't know. So most of the entrepreneurs who come to us, they know their business very well. They know their industry inside and out, but they may not also be an expert in accounting, in finance, in legal matters, in organizational management, in digital marketing, or in e-commerce. So come to the Urban League, reach out to us anytime. Our website is laul.org, LA Urban League, laul.org. Go to the Entrepreneurship Center, send us some information, and we'll get back to you right away and help you to grow your company. We'll help you get access to capital, access to expertise, technical assistance, whatever it is you need to fill the gaps in your company. So thank you again to all of you for joining us. Thanks again to our amazing speakers, Reverend Gerald, to our internal team, and Jacinda and Mike and Samira. Thank you all so much, and have a wonderful evening. And again, Urban League is here to help out. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.